Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful day. I'm sure you had many other things you'd rather do other than to come and listen to this. How are we doing on this? Good? Again, thank you for coming out on this beautiful day. And it's hard to say, gee, I have to go to Eno Hall to listen to the people talk about the Declaration of Independence. But when you think about it, it's such a monumental document in our history. And we have 4 people from Connecticut that actually signed the Declaration. And we're going to hear more about their background. We'll do some real good role playing to help us understand how important this document is. Because in 2026, we're celebrating the 250th year of the signing of the Declaration. So as co-chair of the committee organized to create programs and events during 2026 and leading up to the 250th anniversary celebration of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which occurred on July 4th, 1776. Actually, the celebration has already begun. In April of this year, historic sites and individuals were encouraged to nationally display 2 lights in their windows to commemorate Paul Revere's ride in 1775, which alerted the colonies of the British invasion. Nationally, and here in Simsbury, events will continue throughout 2026, highlighted by a parade and the ringing of bells across the nation at 2 p.m. on the 4th. We gather this afternoon to honor the 4 patriot signers of the Declaration of Independence: Oliver Wolcott, Samuel Huntington, Roger Sherman, and William Williams. In Connecticut, the signers were selected by the Committee of Correspondence, which was located in Hartford. Their selection was based on being a leading man of importance, having large real estate holdings, being an important merchant, or serving as an active legislative leader. These brave patriots stepped forward and signed this bold statement of grievances, thus creating a document that forever altered the course of human history. On July 4th, 1776, representatives of the 13 colonies declared to the world on that day that they would no longer live as subjects of a distant crown, King George III, but that they would live as free people entitled to govern themselves. Actually, only the approval of the text was on July 4th. The actual signing of the document on parchment started on August 2nd, 1776. The final signer of the 56 signers was Thomas McKeon of Delaware, who signed the document a year and a half later in January 1777. Prior to the reading of the Declaration of Independence by our 4 patriots, they'll tell us about their background and their sense of patriotic duty that led to putting their lives on the line by signing that timeless document. After the reading, we'll have a fun, interactive question and answer opportunity, which will assess your recollection of some of the facts the 4 signers are presenting to you. This is where you'll use the paddles you receive to identify the name of the signer whom you feel is the correct response to the question. For these 4 Connecticut patriots you're about to hear from, may I remind you, by signing the Declaration, it meant more than ink on parchment. It meant committing their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to the cause of liberty. They knew the risks, that if the revolution failed, they would be branded as traitors. And yet they signed, because they believed future generations deserved to inherit a land of freedom. And now we have the opportunity to learn about the background of these men, Our signers from Connecticut: Oliver Wolcott, Samuel Huntington, Roger Sherman, and William Williams. Gentlemen.
My name is Oliver Wolcott, and I was born in the year of our Lord 1726 into a family of prominence in Windsor, Connecticut. My father, Roger Wolcott, was governor of the colony. From my earliest days, I was steeped in public service and imbued with a sense of duty to my community. I studied at Yale College, graduating in 1747. Upon completion of my studies, I immediately took up arms in defense of my colony. My first taste of battle came in the French and Indian War, where I commanded a company of militia on the northern frontier. This early service gave me valuable military experience, and it was here that I developed a reputation for courage, discipline, and steadiness under pressure, if I do say so myself. Following the hostilities, I returned to Connecticut and then resumed civilian colonial life as sheriff of Litchfield County. I held that post for more than 20 years. This job required me to be more than simply an enforcer of law, but also a community leader, where I earned the trust of others for my judgment and fairness. As the conflict between Britain and the colonies deepened in the 1760s and 1770s, the people began to know that the voice of Oliver Wolcott was one of resistance. I served in the Connecticut legislature, where I opposed British taxation without representation, and I aligned myself with the growing patriot cause. By 1775, with the outbreak of war to our north in Concord and Lexington, I once again turned to my military training. I became a brigadier general of the Connecticut militia and was later appointed to the rank of major general. My service was not symbolic. I led my troops from the front, in the field. I supplied provisions to the Army and worked tirelessly to support the cause of independence and the Continental forces fighting for liberty. Now, at this same time, Connecticut needed leaders in Congress. So in 1775, I was appointed as a delegate to the Second Continental Congress. It was there, a year later, that I joined my other colleagues from Connecticut, Huntington, Sherman, and Williams, in the decision for independency. Though I was often absent due to military duties, I cast my vote for liberty and later signed my name to the Declaration of Independence. By doing so, I pledged not only my honor as a statesman, but also my strength as a soldier to the cause of freedom for a new nation of Americans. You might ask, what was Oliver Wolcott's life like during the Revolution? Well, mine was a balance between the battlefield and the assembly hall. I helped supply troops at crucial moments, commanded forces in defense of New York, and worked to maintain order back home in Connecticut. One story often told is that when King George III's statue in New York was pulled down by patriots in 1776, my soldiers transported pieces of the lead back to Connecticut, where they were melted down and cast into bullets for the Continental Army. In that symbolic act, the trappings of monarchy were literally transformed into weapons of liberty. After independence was secured, I continued to serve my country. I was active in Connecticut politics, serving as lieutenant governor for more than a decade, and eventually becoming governor in 1796. As governor, I worked to guide the state in the early years of the Republic, upholding law, order, and stability in a time when the new nation was still finding its footing. I will be remembered not as a man of flamboyance or fiery rhetoric. Rather, I am known for having a steady hand, integrity, and devotion to duty. I hope you will remember my story because the Revolution was not only a battle of ideas, but also a struggle of endurance. Independence was not won in a single moment of bold declaration, but in a lifetime of commitment. Liberty was forged not only by speeches and signatures, but by bullets cast from the lead of toppled kings, by the steady march of militia on the frontiers, and by governors who guided their people with wisdom. So may all of you, in your own time, live with the same sense of duty that when our nation calls, in whatever form, we answer with courage, perseverance, and devotion to the common good.
Forgive me, I have to wear my spectacles. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests and fellow citizens, my name is Samuel Huntington of Connecticut, a signer of the Declaration of Independence and later President of the Continental Congress. I was born in 1731 in Windham, Connecticut colony. My beginnings were humble. I was the son of a farmer, and unlike many of my contemporaries in leadership, I did not have the privilege of a college education. Instead, I taught myself to read, all the time while working hard on the family farm. I later was an apprentice as a cooper, but studying law at the same time. My story is a reminder that the Revolution was not only led by scholars and men of wealth, but also by those of modest origins whose dedication and perseverance carried us into the forefront of history. By the 1760s, I had established myself as a respected lawyer in Norwich, Connecticut. My reputation for integrity and good judgment drew me into public life. I served in the Colonial Assembly as a justice of the peace and later as judge of the Supreme Court. These roles gave me a front row seat to the growing dispute between the colonies and the Crown. I observed the effects of taxation without representation, the tension over unfair trade restrictions, and the rising anger of ordinary citizens. When resistance gave way to open conflict in 1775, Connecticut chose me as one of the delegates to the Continental Congress. My peers said I had a steady manner and a sense of balance. I may not have been the loudest voice at the Continental Congress. However, I tried to be a man of reason, deeply committed to principle, and respected for my calm presence. In July of 1776, I joined my colleagues, Roger Sherman, William Williams, Oliver Wolcott, in signing my name, Samuel Huntington, to the Declaration of Independence. By affixing my name to that document, I pledged, as we all did, my life, fortune, and sacred honor. Knowing that if the revolution failed, I would be called a traitor and probably hung. You should know that my role did not end with the signing of the Declaration. I proudly went on to many years of service for the Congress during the Revolution. Not many know that in 1779, I was elected president of the Continental Congress. In that role, I was the presiding officer of America's national government at a time when the nation's very survival was in doubt. Under my presidency, the Congress continued to hold together the fragile union of the 13 states, balancing their competing interests while sustaining the war effort against Britain. I served as president until 1781, longer than most who held that position, and helped guide Congress through the financial difficulties, military challenges, and political disputes. George Washington himself expressed gratitude for my calm leadership during those troubled years until independence was secured. After leaving Congress, I returned to Connecticut, but my service to state and nation continued. I became Lieutenant Governor, then Governor of Connecticut, holding that office until 1796. During that time as governor, I resolved the issue of where to put the state capital, which we put in Hartford, and I oversaw the construction of the State House. I also presided over Connecticut's ratifying convention in 1787, where the Constitution of the United States was approved, ensuring the state's place in the new federal union. If I, Samuel Huntington, should be worthy enough to be remembered, I hope it will be as a reserved, modest, and deeply religious man, not one who sought glory or fame, but had persistence and good judgment, and hopefully my life from farmhand to self-taught lawyer, from colonial assemblyman to governor, is a testament to America's belief that the ability and character is not by birth and wealth, but should determine a person's place in society. It is also important to remember the sacrifices endured by my like-minded colleagues. We risked everything by joining the cause of independence. Our long years of service, often under great stress, were themselves an act of devotion to the fledgling republic. My fellow citizens, as we reflect on the years since independence, do not celebrate the loudest voices, but the power of steady leadership, especially in times of uncertainty and grave challenges. Vision, progress, integrity, and determination is the leadership my colleagues exhibited. Finally, let us remember that freedom was not won by the few for the few, but by many individuals, each giving what they could, each standing firm when the times demanded it. This is the very character of the American Revolution itself, a people who, without certainty of success, chose to bind themselves together to risk all for liberty and to build a nation dedicated to the principles that government exists to serve the people. I pray my legacy and the legacy of all who signed the Declaration continues to inspire us with courage, to lead with wisdom, to persevere with gratitude that the freedoms they fought for were secured. Thank you for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Roger Sherman. My story begins in 1721 in Newton, Massachusetts. Like Samuel Huntington, I came from humble beginnings. My father was a farmer and a shoemaker. A formal education was out of reach, but I studied on my own and mastered mathematics, law, theology, and public affairs. I apprenticed as a shoemaker, and then I moved to Connecticut in search of opportunity, where by the 1740s, I became a surveyor, helping to chart the growing communities of Connecticut. My skills in mathematics and land measurement gave me a reputation for accuracy and fairness. At the same time, I continued my studies in law, eventually earning admission to the bar despite never having attended college. I became a representative in the Connecticut General Assembly, then a justice of the peace, a judge of the Superior Court, and eventually a delegate to the Continental Congress. When the storm clouds of revolution gathered, I was ready. I was chosen as one of Connecticut's first delegates to the Continental Congress in 1774. There I joined with other colonial leaders in drafting the Articles of Association, a collective agreement to boycott British goods in protest of Parliament's harsh measures. 2 years later, in 1776, I was among the 5 men appointed to draft the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson would do the writing, but I, along with John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Robert Livingston, reviewed and shaped the document that would forever declare America's claim to liberty. On July 4th, 1776, I cast my vote in favor of independence, and soon after, my signature was placed upon that sacred parchment. This was not a decision I made lightly. It meant risking my life, my property, and my reputation. Yet, I believed that the cause of liberty demanded nothing less. Following independence, I continued in Congress for many years, serving on countless committees, offering my wisdom to the daily struggles of the new republic. I was by no means known for eloquent speeches, but for my practical mind, my fairness, and my devotion to the common good. I believed that government must not be built on lofty ideals alone, but on institutions that could endure, that could bring together different regions and interests, and that could serve ordinary people. Perhaps my greatest contribution came in 1787 at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. There, the delegates wrestled with how to balance the interests of large states and small states in the new government. It was a fierce debate, and at times, it seemed the convention might collapse. I proposed what became known as the Connecticut Compromise, a solution that created a House of Representatives based upon population and a Senate where each state had equal representation. This great compromise saved the convention and shaped the structure of Congress that governs us to this day. Outside of politics, people knew me as a devout man of faith and a devoted family man. I married twice and fathered 15 children. Where did I find the time? Despite my demanding public duties, I remained engaged in local community life, serving my church and mentoring younger leaders. I died in 1793 at the age of 72, still serving as a U.S. Senator from Connecticut. I had spent virtually my entire adult life in public service, helping to guide both my state and my country from colonial dependence to revolutionary independence, and finally, to constitutional order. I suppose I stand as an example that greatness does not require wealth or privilege, and that compromise, when grounded in principle, is not weakness, but strength. I would hope my life would demonstrate to others that service to the common good is the highest calling of citizenship. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is William Williams. I was born in 1733 in Lebanon, Connecticut, into a world very different from your own. At the time, the American colonies were outposts for the British Empire, bound by loyalty to a distant crown. My father was a respected minister, and from him I inherited both a strong moral compass and a sense of duty to community. I studied at Harvard, graduating in 1751, and soon returned home to build a life of service. When war broke out in 1754, the French and Indian War, I served as a captain in the Connecticut militia, gaining firsthand experience of both the hardships of battle and the complexities of leadership. The early exposure of military life would shape my later views as the colonies moved toward independence. But I was more than a soldier. I was a merchant, a town leader, and above all, a public servant. I entered politics in the Connecticut General Assembly, where I served for nearly 45 years. The years leading to 1776 were years of rising tension. Parliament imposed taxes without consent. British troops patrolled colonial streets. Voices of protest grew louder. I was among those who believed that liberty was not a privilege handed down by kings, but a right bestowed by all people. I wrote, spoke, and argued tirelessly that colonies must resist tyranny. When Connecticut chose its delegates for the Continental Congress, I was not among those original representatives. But in July of 1776, as the Declaration of Independence was being debated and adopted, I was appointed to replace Oliver Wolcott for a brief time and added my own support. Though I did not take part in drafting Jefferson's immortal words, I was present to sign them, and in doing so, pledged my life, fortune, and sacred honor to the cause of liberty. Signing the Declaration was no symbolic gesture. It was an act of treason against the most powerful empire on earth. By putting my name on that document, I risked losing everything, my property, my livelihood, and even my life. I was 45 years old at the time, with a wife and children, and yet I did not hesitate. I did not see independence as a lofty abstraction, yet as a practical necessity, a promise to my neighbors in Lebanon and to generations yet unborn. I believe that free government, accountable to the people, would secure prosperity and justice in ways monarchy never could. Throughout the revolution, I continued to serve. I provided supplies to troops, gave generously of my own wealth, and worked to strengthen the cause in Connecticut. My home became a gathering place for patriots. I was deeply involved with state politics, later helping ratify the U.S. Constitution in 1788. I lived to see the fruits of my labor. I died in 1811 at the age of 80, having witnessed a young United States not only secure its independence, but also establish a new constitutional order. And yet, though I lived a long life, my legacy is not measured in years, but in the principles I upheld. I believe that ordinary people, merchants, farmers, teachers, soldiers, had both the right and the responsibility to shape their own destiny. I believe that freedom required sacrifice and that self-government required virtue. Today, nearly 250 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, you would do well to remember men like us. That history is not only made by the most famous names, but also those who, with courage and conscience, chose to act when the moment demands it. That liberty is worth defending, that independence is worth the risk, and that the experiment that began in 1776 calls to each of us to be vigilant, engaged, and true to the values that shaped our nation. May we live in such a way that we leave behind not just our names, but a legacy of service, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion to freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Patriots. Starting in the early 1770s, more and more colonists are becoming convinced that Parliament and King George III intend to take away their freedom. For the first time, many colonists begin to realize that this tyranny cannot continue and that they need to consider cutting ties with Britain. And so in 1775, the growing masses of discontented colonists prepare for war against a foe of seemingly unlimited resources. The movement for independence was now in full swing. In 2026, 250 years later, we honor the men who drafted the Declaration: Jefferson, Franklin, Adams, Livingston, and Connecticut's own Roger Sherman. We remember why the Declaration was written, what it said, and what it sought to enforce. That freedom is the natural right of all people, that government exists to serve and not to rule the governed. and that the pursuit of liberty requires both courage and sacrifice. Gentlemen, your declaration.
The Declaration of Independence. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governance long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shewn that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
He refused to his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the disposition of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them in a compliance with his measures. He has dissolved the representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolution to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the states remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hereunder, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judicial powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has elected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without consent of our legislators. He has effected to tender military independence of and superior to civil powers. He has continued with others to subject us to jurisdictions foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their arts and pretend legislation.
For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally our forms of government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here, declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravished our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun, with the circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of a head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these impressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have been warned them from the time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstance of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. We have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce to the necessity which denounce our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war and in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America and in general Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for this support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other's lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, now this is where we assess whether you're eligible for Jeopardy or not. This is the interactive part of our program. There's no prize for your perfect responses to our 10 questions, other than pride. So get your paddles ready. Raise the face and name on the paddle toward the front of the person that you feel is the correct response to the question. Which signer was born in Massachusetts and is the oldest of the 4 Connecticut delegates? Hold it up. What do you say? Roger Sherman is the correct answer. Born in Newton, Massachusetts in 1721, he was 55 when he signed the Declaration. Huntington and Williams were 45, and Walcott was 49. Young whippersnapper. He was Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court and Governor of Connecticut. Samuel Huntington. Thank you. He had a limited education, which came mostly from books borrowed from local lawyers and friends, eventually passed the bar, authored 17 books, and 100 scholarly articles. Which signer's children helped to make bullets from the toppled statue of King George III in the area of what is now known as Wall Street? Oliver Walcott. Ta-da! While passing through New York City, he witnessed the tearing down of the equestrian statue of King George. The head of the statue was sent back to England, and Walcott took the remaining parts of the statue back to Litchfield and had the metal melted down to make over 42,000 musket bullets. Which signer has the distinction of being the only founding father to sign the Articles of Association in 1774, the Declaration in 1776, the Articles of Confederation in 1781, and the Constitution in 1787, a busy guy by the name of Roger Sherman. Yeah, Raj. He was also a member of the Committee of 5 that drafted the Declaration. Who was sent to Congress to replace Oliver Walcott after he became seriously ill? William Williams. Ta-da. Whoa, this is a good crowd. Williams arrived in Philadelphia on July 28, 1776, and signed the Declaration on August the 2nd. who was appointed Brigadier General in August 1776 and assumed command of 14 Connecticut militia regiments to serve under George Washington on Long Island during the Battle of Brooklyn. Oliver Wolcott. Ta-da. As governor, he dealt with determining the permanent site and construction of the state capitol at Hartford. Samuel Huntington. Okay, just 3 opportunities left to get that perfect score. This founding father had 15 children. He was the first mayor of New Haven, treasurer of Yale College, a 20-year member of Congress. Roger Sherman. Ta-da! Of the 4 delegates, he lived to be the oldest, dying at the age of 80 on August the 2nd, 1811. In fact, it was 35 years to the day after he had signed the Declaration. William Williams, Bill. Okay, our last challenge question. He played a major role in the early founding of American independence, both on the battlefield and in the Continental Congress. He was the son of Connecticut's colonial governor and would later also become governor. He practiced and studied medicine with his brother in Goshen. Oliver Wolcott. Congratulations to everybody here. This concludes our program this afternoon. A big thank you to the following people. Kevin Beal as Oliver Wolcott. Paul Hinault as Samuel Huntington. Andrew Sharp as Roger Sherman. And Stephen Maher as William Williams. And to Carolyn Stewart of the Connecticut DAR Simsbury Abigail Phelps chapter for the script, to Diana Yeasley of the Theater Guild of Simsbury, and to Rachel Yagi for the AI research. Our future programs will be on the Simsbury 250th@weebly.com website and also on Facebook. So, as we have honored Sherman, Huntington, Williams, and Wolcott, may we too draw inspiration from their example. Let us cherish the liberty they secured, and let us summon the courage to stand for freedom, the wisdom to act with justice, and the vision to leave this nation stronger for those who follow. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your participation.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government come together.